Greetings. My name is Guy Dauncey, and this is a show called Change the World, where I like to invite guests on who share my enthusiasm for positive thinking, for a vision of the future, for a determination that we can turn this planet into something amazing, which it is already, of course. And my guest today is Ajay Puri, who's come across the water from Vancouver. Ajay is a public speaker, facilitator, a movement builder. You have to tell me what that is later, right? It's 20 years experience empowering communities and creating social change in the nonprofit, academic, government, social innovation sector. You co-founded many movements. Co-founded, important word, right? Lead Now, East Van Love, B Van City, Rangi Changi Roots, Canadians for Obama, Changemakers Vancouver. And background to that, you've got a master's in health administration and worked in healthcare a long time. So that's a lot of stuff, right? But a movement builder, like, that's not a normal career path for people. What is it?
Well, good question. Also, I just want to acknowledge, thank you for hosting me and having a program like this to really empower people to, think about what the future can look like in a positive way. So, Guy, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you.
Thank you for that.
And I'm trying to dodge the question, as you can
back to it. What is a movement builder?
Well, no, I think for me, the things that get me excited are really empowering people and thinking about something bigger than yourself. Yes. Something that can really move people to think of a better future that is built on justice, built on environmental advocacy, and a place where we can all thrive and have equal access to things and equity. So for me, it's like, how do we do that? And a lot of things that drive me, aren't related to money. Right. So for movement building, for me, it's like people powered. It's how do we get a group of people behind you, or follow the people as one of the people to see if we can make change.
I mean, the Industrial Revolution was probably powered by money power and people wanting to make money from it, but it was equally inspired by genius people saying about public health care, public education, inventions, and this, that, the other, and environmental movements, feminist movements, gay movement. They're all nothing to do with money. They're about vision of justice.
Yes.
And belief in a better future.
It's true, and I think that's the beauty where we're moving towards. It's very interesting. People can say negative things about social media as an example, but I think there's some benefits. It's still a young tool. It's only 10 years old. So if you think of it as a human, a 10-year-old is just developing. So like any technology.
I think of social media like a mirror, because your friends are the ones you've chosen, and they're reflecting back to you what they do in life, right? If you've got friends and all they care about is cats, your social media is full of cats. It's a reflection of you. I think it's a phenomenally powerful resource.
Exactly.
But because something like Facebook is run as a for-profit enterprise, they've got a double motive going on. They've got people maximize dollars, maximize this, maximize advertising. And just today, for the first time driving up here, I heard that whenever a white supremacy site comes on, and any links to that, they're going to change those links and make them to a site of how to stop being a white supremacist.
Wow.
So they're finally, but there's a billion tweets a day or something. It's just keep control of a monster that big.
Yeah, and I think this is the timely questions for us to move forward in, and like, how do we keep that healthy tension of ownership of these media in a way that we can help center things and put the pressure on for the things that we care about versus like it being a tool for us to get marketed to. So, and like the Christchurch thing and the mosque shooting, and if those things were happening 20, 30 years ago, would the world be rallying the same way? I also think social media, like you said, that could be a good analogy as a mirror. I think it's a really interesting way to see what truth really is. Right. So the more people are sharing their truths, then you can kind of go through it, like police brutality or something going on. You can actually see, 15 different perspectives from the ground, and then see what the media is saying. What are other people saying? Politicians or business leaders, nonprofit leaders, and so hopefully then the viewer can then make a decision that's based on, okay, well, what do I really see as the truth? Yeah.
Well, the Christchurch mosque shooting, you bring it up. It's a really powerful example because out of something horrible, we've got at least three things really good happening. You've got a prime minister role modeling a combination of genuine palpable love and compassion and a real firmness. You've got her articulating for the first time, we're never going to name this killer. We don't want to give him any attention. Mm-hmm. And for the third thing, within 7 days, we're going to change our gun laws. Which people in America and Canada are going like, what? Within 7 days? And the fact they're role modeling, she's role modeling to the world, leaders can do that.
And I think this is really important. And again, I don't know what will happen moving forward, but just making those statements more than just an apology that could be empty, or making a task force to do something for 10 years.
Just doing it.
Really, I think that shows allyship, right?
And then on top of that, the number of people who came forward to show their love and respect to people of the Muslim faith, to say, you know, we're in this together, we're going to protect you, you know, we're not demonizing you. That was powerful. It
is very powerful. And then these are the steps that we have to keep going on this journey of really understanding equity and justice, and looking at ways to make everyone feel inclusive in a society that's run like that, right? And so when there's power and privilege dynamics and different hierarchies, like how do we build a society that is everyone has equal access? Some people might have higher abilities to get things because of their education, their class, their race, their gender. And moving forward, I think we're at an interesting time. And I think with social media, if you loop back, you know, there was a lot of movements like Rosa Parks or Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King or Gandhiji back home in India to get rid of the British, to have self-determination. It's really interesting.
If Gandhiji had been on Twitter, I think he'd been like Trump. He'd have been tweeting every day.
Well, I don't know. That's a really good point. I think...
But good things.
Well, I think so. But I think he's more humble and more modest. That he wouldn't be. But maybe the people around him would help.
Satyagraha, 10 stages. You do this today, right?
Could be, yeah. And I think this is where...
So let me just... I use code Satyagraha is this search for truth, right? It's Hindi, right? So just for viewers who don't know what we're suddenly talking these obscure Hindi terms, right?
Yeah, and it's important to acknowledge that stuff too, and it's really deep. But I think on this side or on the social media, it's interesting because, like you said, Gandhiji back then, and people like Rosa Parks and others, there's a whole movement behind them too.
Yes.
And they didn't have these tools. They still had to get people behind them.
So let me follow through, and I want to get to what you're doing at the moment, but lacking those tools, all of their work was face-to-face.
Yes, yes.
And the weakness of social media is that people can think, well, I did that petition, I tweeted that, I liked this, I liked that, and they never get out of their living room.
Yes, it's like slacktivism it's called. So you can like something, but you don't really have to take a full
because
deep,
when the work was happening to stop the slave trade or the first suffragettes, every week they were meeting in each other's homes. So they're building the relationships of bonding and caring simultaneously, and that's very, very weak with social media until you meet in person, right?
Yeah, and you need both, right? And so I think that's the beauty of moving forward, like Black Lives Matter or Idle No More. People can say, well, it's not really doing anything. Well, it isn't about making an action, it's the process. It's really activating people to get back into something that they felt left out.
So let me jump immediately to... You're probably doing about 10 projects, right? What's the current one that's giving you the most enthusiasm, the most passion?
Oh, if I had to choose one, that's a tough one. You know, I think it is an identity one, and it's also sort of a futurist thing. So in Vancouver, there's a lot, you know, we're almost 55 to 60% non-white in Vancouver, the population of Vancouver.
Wow,
But if you think about politics and who's representing us, it's still a white council.
It's mostly pretty white, yes.
Pretty white. And actually, it always has had a cis white male, mostly upper class.
And by cis, you're meaning sort of
like you represent
straight white.
Yeah, straight white. No, but it means like you represent what your identity is. So your gender expression is always your gender. So you're a male, but you can have a gender expression and change it over time. But the point is that queerness and straightness is a different thing. But the point is, like, yes, most of them probably have been straight unless they were not, you know, open about their sexuality. But the point is, like, it's been really, I think it's been 40 male mayors. And only one was non-able-bodied, right, which was Sam Sullivan. And so if you've always had that representation to lead the city, what does it look like? Even if you want to be like this amazing mayor or this mayor in New Zealand, you can still be a good ally. But moving forward, the concept for me is like, how do we build a better society that really thinks about things? So
is that to do with getting other people to run for office and having the confidence to believe they can? Because you can't get elected unless you put your name forward.
Yeah, this is so deep. Politics is a really good question, and I wish we had an hour and a half.
Well,
but I'll
use what we got.
I'll loop back on this one.
Yes.
I'll parking lot it or bike valet it. But one of the things that I think is really, like you asked me what project I'm really dedicated to. So when you're having this sort of culture of politicians who make decisions.
Yes.
And you're looking at the neighborhoods of Vancouver and the
Yes.
population and the diversity of Vancouver
Yes.
not being reflected. What can we do? One of the projects I've been blessed to be working with is with different partners and the community is on Punjabi Market.
Okay.
So Punjabi Market, if people don't know, and I don't know if you.
I don't know, so tell me.
Okay, so Punjabi Market was on Main and 49th. It's still
Yes.
there.
Okay.
But the first shop, this first South Asian shop,
Yeah.
started in 1970 in May.
Right.
Okay, and there's a lot of story around that, and we can get to
Yeah.
that. But the first shop started in 1970,
Yes.
and in the high time, in the 80s and 90s, there was over 300 shops.
Oh, wow.
So if you can imagine, in a
big.
6-block radius around Main and
I
49th,
can picture the aroma of herbs and spices and all
it's
the
true.
stuff needed
all
for
the
cooking.
colors, exactly.
Oh.
It was wonderful. It was a
Yeah.
bazaar. It was
Yeah.
like people came from all over North America.
Yeah, wow.
So here's the high stats.
Yes.
It was the first and largest South Asian market out of India, out of South Asia,
Really?
Pakistan,
Okay.
Bangladesh,
So this
Sri
is the
Lanka.
equivalent of a Chinatown, but it's now for the Punjabi community.
Exactly, and South Asian community
Yes,
in arts, right?
okay,
So
right.
and it goes beyond just being Sikh or Hindu
Okay.
or Muslim.
South Asian in general.
Yeah,
yes.
it's South
Okay.
Asian in general, and really priding that identity. And
Yeah.
so now in 2018, when it was the high time of 300 shops,
Yes.
24 groceries, 24 jewelry shops,
Yeah.
10 grocery stores, over 10 restaurants.
Yes.
Like it was quite diverse in
Yes.
terms of the
Is it
offerings.
a one-day market?
No. This
It's permanent.
It's
It's
a
every day.
permanent
Oh, it's a-
market that was there with 300 shops.
Shops or street stalls?
Shops.
Shops, okay.
Paying rent or
Oh, I see.
ownership. Yeah.
Okay.
And so this is Main and 49th. Now, when you look at the analysis and look at what's happening, you'll see, for sale signs
Hmm.
or empty signs. So 1/4 to 1/3 of the shops are empty.
Right.
And it's 2019. So why is that happening?
Yes.
Where are these people going? They had shops,
Yes.
or why isn't the city supporting it? So we're in this now transition of
Yeah.
like honoring the past and like all the high time, and like what do we want to dream for the future? Do we want glass towers and multinational shops and
Yeah.
coffee shops,
So-
or do we want it community-led ventures and nonprofits and businesses
Right.
and arts spaces and
Yes.
murals? And so that's where we're at right now. And this is one of the projects I'm very excited about, with then the decision makers,
Yes.
not reflecting us in terms of race,
Yes.
in terms of how we look, but
Yes.
in their hearts, I do think that they're ready to like really explore how do we come together and have all these different neighborhoods of Vancouver represented more and prided of the past and moving to the forward.
Yeah, and every one of those is a business. So they're sort of employing people, they're bringing
Exactly,
economic life to the
activity.
community.
And there's a lot of nonprofits, and there's
Yeah.
there's a immigrant settlement service called PICS
Right.
there, and there's a really great Bhangra and Punjabi like arts society there, a nonprofit that is
Yeah.
run there.
So is the reason for the decline that the millennial younger generation of South Asians are not doing Indian shopping anymore? They're going to the regular supermarket, or they're buying fast food, or they're not buying so much jewelry. What's the...
Well, and this is the work. So we've been doing this work now 2 to 3 years,
Yes.
working with community, learning from community, trying to address and bring forward the ideas from the community.
Yeah.
And there's a multitude of factors. So that's part of it.
Yeah.
There's also other parts of like how is other neighborhoods like Main and Broadway or Kitsilano or
Yes.
other areas where there's big festivals,
Yeah.
how are they doing so well, right? And not deteriorating 1/4. So
Right.
what are the things that the community can lead and businesses,
Yes.
and what is it responsibility of the government and the city government? So there's a tension around, well, the city should have helped support it.
Right.
And there was issues in the past where I can tell you one of the facts. So this is really interesting.
Okay.
So in 1970, the reason why the first Punjabi shop was open on Main Street was they were denied the shops on the west side. And the way that the city council at the
Right.
time did it in the 60s and 70s
Yes.
was, you can open your restaurant, you can open your shop, but you know what we'll do is put permits on all the parking. So people who live here
Yes.
are the only ones who can park here. They didn't want mobs, in quotations, of brown
Yeah.
people
So-
coming to the west
so-
side and taking over.
You know, to use an American term, that's redlining.
Redlining. It's
And
pretty much a
the
similar.
redlining came up I think after the war, when the mortgage brokers were sort of looking in a place like Seattle,
And it's big in California.
and they drew a map based on income levels, which is code for racial levels. They said, well, that area is too high risk, which meant that the black community in Seattle never got a chance to get into home ownership, which means even if the income levels are different, the wealth levels are phenomenally different between the black community and the white community, because the prime way in which people gain wealth is through your home value and your home equity. And they were shut
land.
out of that by redlining. So the Punjabis and South Asians got shut out of West Vancouver, sort of.
Yeah, the west side, exactly. And that's why they had to open on Main Street.
Yes.
And then it started as one, and then they kept growing. But it actually was they said the uncles and aunties that I've been talking to, the elders, are so full of great stories, and they had to do a lot of sacrifice. So I could be on a show like this with you, right? It's the next generation who can advocate.
Yeah.
It was actually a combination with German led businesses. So the German community was open on Main Street. So they were cohabiting that area.
Schnitzel and curry.
Schnitzel and curry and all the different kind of fusions, exactly. And it's interesting, and I think, I mean, I wanted to bring it up at the beginning, and you asked about movement building, but I think it's me as a brown person, right, and coming from South Asia in terms of my parents, you know, now we're on unceded territories, right, the Coast Salish peoples, and, you know, we're here in Nanaimo on unceded territory, and it's Coast Salish. So it's like, how do we do this Punjabi market in, you know, recognition of the stewards of the land and actually do it in a way that is justice to some of the values that they had of being welcoming. And our Punjabi community is, in theory, welcoming. Like, we want everyone to enjoy it. It doesn't mean that the future has to be only Punjabi people come to this area. We want everyone to enjoy it. So how do we do this nurturing of all the different, you know, intersections of working with the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh?
Are you doing intersectional work with the First Nations?
Exactly. So that's the movement forward, and other partners that, and again, I don't take any credit. It's more that all the different players, there's actually a really great nonprofit called Indian Summer Festival. So there's banners on the streets on 49th, and they've actually did a partnership with a Musqueam artist and a South Asian artist.
So Indian Summer Festival, India refers to South Asia or the First Nations?
South
India?
Asia. South Asia.
Right,
Yeah, so Indian Summer Fest in terms of India. And so they did a double Indian, like a decolonized sort of perspective of artist, and they showed two artists that were, one was Musqueam, one was South Asian.
Okay, right.
And so those banners are there. So there's like really good partners and players in there that want to do more of this kind of intersectional work and bridge building. And I think it's really exciting for me to think of what this neighborhood could look like in the next 50 years. And like you said, the next generation, I really want them to come back, set up new shops, and really have pride and really bring back a community and others to come and see that. Like, it'd be great to have like a South Asian coffee shop with chai on the side, or like, you know, different types of snacks like kale pakoras or kale samosas.
Because one of the weaknesses of suburban development and motor cars and stuff like that is that people aren't lingering on the streets and in the neighborhoods and walking and chattering. I mean, I'm envious. I know in Southern Europe they have nice hot weather. But the process they have in the Spanish towns and Italian towns for just rambling and going out for a walk, the pasada on an evening.
And this is exactly
and everyone's walking at this slow pace because you're there to talk and connect. You're not going anywhere.
And that's what we want, is like open plazas where people can meet. It used to be like that, but the city didn't really help so much with the infrastructure. They did a bit of things, so I should give them some credit, but the community were like, the streets were bustling. Like, you couldn't even walk on the sidewalk. And so they made them a little bit more, but like, imagine them with more color and benches and tables and people meeting.
Well, have you been to Europe recently? Like, all the major cities have stripped the cars entirely out of the city centers.
Exactly, and I think this is really exciting for me to think of those kind of projects.
So we've got 10 minutes left.
Great.
What else are you bustling to talk about? Are you involved in any environmental and climate things?
Again, another project that I've been privileged to be working on is around zero waste and looking at how do we make our city zero waste, which has been a good honor to work with different partners and think about that.
I just heard, as of today, the European Union has banned single-use plastic straws across the whole European Union.
Wow.
Yeah, we need to ban single-use plastic everything.
And so that's one of the projects I'm working on, single-use item reduction stuff. So it's been interesting, and I think it's been really interesting because of my past as a movement builder, and also continuing looking at the Bridge to a Cool Planet that we co-organize with all the different people.
You're saying sometimes you talked the Bridge to a Cool Planet.
Bridge to a Cool Planet.
That was an initiative from some years ago when you
had 10 years now.
A massive climate protest on the Cambie Street Bridge.
Exactly.
10,000 people.
10,000 people we got somehow, and I think that's how we have to keep thinking outside of the box of how do we engage different communities to come together and sort of work together. And
so I watched the TEDx talk you gave, and you mentioned that, and you were saying something interesting. You're saying, the old Ajay would have saying, you're going to do that, you'll do that, you'll do that. And the new Ajay was saying, it was invitational. What would you like to do?
Yes.
So they had the agency, they had the way to participate in a more full way.
And I think that's coming from my elders and my ancestors to be more open and not top down like an army kind of framework, right? It's more like, how do you empower people? And it's been really exciting to try to leverage. Again, I fail sometimes, but when things go really nicely, I just love watching the platform you create to allow things to grow. And at the bridge thing, for instance, we had salsa dancers, right? You wouldn't have thought of salsa dancers to come to an environmental justice movement.
But it's following what I wrote a thing called the 5th law of sustainability.
Oh yeah.
So the first four are serious ecology and stuff like that. There's such places away, recycle, blah, blah. The 5th law says, if it's not fun, it's not sustainable.
Yes, I think it's really important.
And to me, that's the ecology of your inner spirit.
Yes.
Because if we're not being nourished, you're going to burn out.
Absolutely. I think if you think about, you asked me like what other projects, and especially environment, I think one of the big things I would love to do more of and make myself think more of and others is like, how do we bring that sacredness back?
Yeah.
Right? Because we can burn out in our head with academic numbers or policies or protesting or going out and changing policies or creating new businesses.
Yes.
How do we do that in a sustainable way to see, for me at least, my philosophy is like the oneness in it all. So we don't think there's an us and them.
So one of my answers to that is that you've got to remember in everything you do, relationships. Always care about your relationships and keep them strong, and don't let the agenda overrule the people who are part of what is happening. Right?
Yes, exactly. And I think you can't get attached to the outcome. Because when you start getting too dogmatic in terms of the outcome, even though you want justice or you want environmental sustainability, it takes time and it takes patience and it takes understanding. And maybe the other person's perspective is a better way to go.
So if we got viewers here, if they're thinking, what are your words of wisdom for someone who wants to get involved in starting an initiative, movement building? What do you advise younger people who are sort of listening to a seasoned veteran?
No, I mean, only doing it for a little while. I mean, I have some gray hair, so getting to a point of, but I don't know if it's wisdom.
What would you advise to other people who say, this world's in a mess, I want to contribute and do something?
Exactly, and I think it is really important because I think there's so much room. There's so much room to do good in the world. It just hurts and it saddens me when people get kind of sad about it and they don't think they can do anything. Everybody and every action can matter. So I think the big thing is to not have, don't lose faith. Right? Have faith in
Faith in
whatever cause you believe in, whether it's saving animals or if it's saving the environment or racial justice
and your
or
vision
gender
of success,
feminism or indigenous rights. I think it's super important to really keep persistent, bring people with you, talk it through. If you're more of an introvert, it doesn't mean you have to be extroverted, right? I think there's room for all different things. You can write about it. You can do things differently. You don't have to be on Twitter. You know, there's different ways to do these kind of movements. And I think it's just to have faith, and know what you believe in. And when you know what you believe in, your values, you're going to get tested. Boy, you're going to get tested. Like I said, in the past, I would be delegating because I'm like, I know everything. This is really urgent because people are dying. We got to do this. Otherwise, in 5 years, nobody's going to be here. Well, chill out. Maybe that's not too the right way. It's too strong. So, really think about when you start your movement, you have something that triggered your value and you see something unjust. So really have faith in it and have faith in yourself. Strong in your values, and then try to see if you can empower others around you to help you with the cause.
Somewhere, either on your website or somewhere, you've got a quote from a philosopher called Dan Dennett, which he lists as the secret of happiness, and it says, find something more important than you are and dedicate your life to it.
Yes.
And he says that's the secret of happiness, basically.
It is, and
I fully agree. I completely agree.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. It makes me a little bit emotional because I think my mom passed about 15 years ago, and I feel like my parents, the sacrifice that they made to have me have an education, have a better life here in Canada. It's like my duty to support them and service them. So for me, it's not my own ego that I want. To become this crazy leader and do all these things. It's more of service to them to really make a better world for if we do, my partner and I have children or others that do have children, a better life for them. And so
I think of the sacrifice in a longer history, the people who worked their butts off to end the slave trade, to get the votes for women, to basically get poverty out of here, to get proper structures, to get public education, to get public health care, to defeat fascism, for God's sake, right? The people who died, that we can be having this conversation here, like my gratitude and appreciation for them is pretty big, right?
Exactly, it's to be
and
grateful.
And then if we sit back and say, we can't do anything, or I want to watch television instead. Like, we're letting them down.
That's
We're
right.
betraying all the work they did.
That's right,
To
to
give
get
us
us to
this,
here.
to get us to here.
And it's a concept of collective consciousness.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do another 100 years, what does that look like? What is your duty?
And we're facing such a huge climate crisis,
Yes.
such a huge ecological crisis,
Yes.
and such a huge crisis of inequality and injustice.
Yes.
It's not as if we're short of
No.
projects.
No. And I think that to end with in terms of some points,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much time we have, but I think you're hitting it because for me it's the question I'm moving forward with in life and I've been thinking about is like, who are we becoming?
That's a really big, important question.
Yeah, and like all the actions you take, all the thoughts you have, who are you going to become from that?
Yeah.
So really be conscious of that.
This who are we becoming individually,
Yes.
but if you look at our progress on the planet,
Yes.
over 14 billion years to create us,
Yes.
and the sun doesn't start turning into a black dwarf, whatever it is, for another
right.
3 or 4 billion years, we have to shape our future.
Yes, and if
And
we
not
don't,
something, if we don't, we allow greedy, selfish, self-centered people to do
Yes.
what they want,
Yes.
which is
Or-
not
or
to anyone's benefit.
at a spiritual level, maybe then Mother Nature would kill us off with something big. And maybe that's a good thing to get us off. So there's a
yeah.
point where we might have a chance to
Yeah.
redeem ourselves.
Well, I can't go along with that one. because
no,
I-
but
because
I'm
I
just
think-
saying, I'm putting it
yes.
that way because it's an important concept.
I think if we don't take global responsibility for
Yes.
what we're doing,
Yes.
there's going to be a hell of a dark time ahead for a lot of us.
Exactly.
Little things like if we allow 75% of the insects to die, we get no food pollination.
Exactly.
And they combine that with drought, we're starving, right? But when people reclaim that partnership with nature, and I have a vision of a future economy which every single economic action builds harmony with nature instead
Yes.
of destroying it.
That's right.
I call GDP gross depletion of the planet.
Yes.
And so that vision of having an economy in harmony with nature, that's an achievable task.
Well,
Zero waste, 100% renewable energy.
absolutely.
It's all doable.
And I think that's the key. If we can change our economic models and models, you called it this, I love this model. Mine is
Yeah.
not the ROI, like business return
Yes.
on investments, return on P, return on people and planet.
There you go.
And so
Yes.
if we can think that way, then
Yeah.
we are thinking legacy planning. We are thinking
Yeah.
for a longer future beyond us.
A longer future beyond us and a beautiful one,
I
sustainable
hope
one.
so, yes.
We've got to wind up.
Yes, thank you so much, Guy.
My guest today has been Ajay Puri, who is a change maker, a visionary, an activist, and make it all beautiful things happen from Vancouver.
Trying.
For my part, one of my contributions is this novel I wrote called Journey to the Future, A Better World is Possible, which is set in Vancouver in the year 2032, when Vancouver has become an ecotopia, an amazing place, while still struggling with climate crisis and ecological crisis. We can't solve those things that quickly. If you enjoy this kind of programming, tune in next week for more of the same, and thanks for watching.